You did send me that research that showed that Americans regard Australians as their best friends. It was very interesting research, and thank you for it. It also showed, and I found this interesting, and it's germane to my next question, that Americans still they're still deeply committed to their country, as I understood it, and love it very much. They're concerned for it, but they're still committed to it. Whereas you would think from the extreme liberal perspective that plays out so strongly in this day and age that Americans actually think they're the world's worst. They're the world's most racist, that they are illiberal, that they are somehow a grossly immoral people. But there is a gulf there, isn't there? And it's shown up in this election. There is a clear repudiation of what might be loosely bracketed together now under the sort of new religious heading or heading of the new religion, the social justice warriors with a capital S, capital J, capital W. This election surely has shown that middle America still packs punch and rejects extremes, if I can put it that way, despite the way we've been led to believe Americans feel about themselves and their future.
Absolutely. I think what Americans are saying to the world is the American that you see that travels overseas, the international corporate business person, the America you see on your Hollywood movie or your New York sitcom, the America you see with a massage Google search or a Facebook sort of ad, the America you see when an NBA player editorializes, the America you see on our international CNN TV shows, the America you read when you read the International Herald Tribune, that's not America. That is a very influential, powerful 30% of the country, and they misrepresent what America is, what the people feel, and you're never going to really understand America unless people come to America and meet those people, because they don't have access to explain America. They don't own the media. They don't own Silicon Valley. They don't have they're not the big banks. They're not Wall Street. They're not corporations, but they're in the majority. And they're very good people, and they're very proud of their heritage, and they're not racist. The families are interracial. They're intermarrying at a record rate, but they do believe that if you come to America from Mexico or Asia, you came for a reason, that you wanted something better than the alternative, which was your homeland. And they're perfectly willing and able and eager to assimilate you, to intermarry with you, and to integrate with you. But they do not want you to form a identity politics, Balkan, Rwanda, Iraq model of tribalism. And they don't want you coming here and attacking the traditions, the protocols, the icons, the statuaries, the names of a tradition and a country that has no apologies for its past. That's not to mean it's not cognizant of our shortcomings, but no apologies. And so that's the message. And I didn't want to depress your listeners at the beginning, because as I was telling my wife, I was astonished how close the election was, because I kept saying, these people are going to really cheat. And they've got pollsters that are not disinterested. And the media has gone crazy. And social media has gone crazy. And the internet moguls are openly telling Congress we can do what we want. We don't have to be fair. And they made Donald Trump into a monster. And yet, as you say, 50% of the country voted for him. But more importantly, on the down ballots, all of the candidates basically won that could win. And they're in a position now, I think, that if the Democratic Party wants to pursue this agenda, it will really lose power in 2 years. It'll be inert. And right now, if Joe Biden is president, he will get no legislation through because the Senate will not approve any of it. He will get no justices through because the Senate will not approve it. He has no popular support. The country's bitter at the way he was elected. I think he's in a cognitive and physical state where many of the Trump people said He will be shortly relieved of his duties by the socialist Kamala Harris. I think that may be true within a year or two, and that will be a disaster for the Democratic Party because she articulated positions that have zero public support. She didn't get one delegate, not one, in the Democratic primary.
That seems to me to be highly significant because even here in Australia, you've had what you would call the liberal media almost salivating at the thought of the vice president becoming the president. You can feel it because they want those values up. But they would be a disaster, wouldn't they? They would absolutely guarantee that there was a change next time round. The results show it. The American people are not up for embracing the extreme left, to use that term, agenda. They're not going to wear it. It's very clear to me as a former politician that they've said, look, Donald's just a bit too rough for us. He's too crude. He's too divisive. The tweets are too much, as you put it. But they have not repudiated the disruption, if you like, and the reset, the major reset. And to ignore that, I guess it seems to me it would be politically fatal for the Democrats.
Well, I think that if I could articulate the American mindset and by extension suggest maybe in some parts of it reflect the Australian or the British mindset, it's something like this. The left is giving us a choice between joining them and cultural suicide. In other words, they're telling us that the entire premise of Western free market capitalism, private property, constitutional government, rationalism, religious tolerance, multiracialism instead of multiculturalism, all of that was flawed at the beginning. And you have to be perfect in our perfect eyes to be good. And we're going to use the standards of 2020 to go back into the past and not see it as tragedy when it disappoints us, but as melodrama. We're going to pick our winners and losers, and yours are going to be losers, and we're going to erase it in the fashion of Trotskyization. And I think most people say, you know what? I kind of had it with that. I don't want a lot of people who don't live in the real world and who seem to enjoy the benefits of our system, our advanced medical care, our great material wealth, our homes, our streets, our security. They all seem to be beneficiaries of it, especially immigrants that want to join it and understand the difference. And yet they deprecate the very forces that create it and sustain it. And so they're almost like court jesters. They live at the court and they make fun of the court, but they're products of the court. And so that's a choice that people are being given. And I think if they keep pushing it, and I can tell you, John, that there's other fissures that you can look through this wall outside of polls and election, and you get a glimpse of what you're talking about. I'm sitting in the most liberal left-wing state in the United States. If you want to go buy a firearm today, you're going to have to wait 9 months. Not because the state is making it difficult to buy, is because very liberal people supposedly have rushed to the gun stores in fright at what they see with the defunding, and they've ordered. If you want to go buy 9mm, 32 caliber, 30, you cannot buy it. It doesn't exist. That people have decided that the Second Amendment is a good thing. If you look at the NBA's ratings, it's at a record low. Nobody's watching. Nobody even knew there was a World Series. They've tuned out of it. If you look at Hollywood movies, they have to rely on Chinese markets, as does the NBA. People have just said, you know, I'm living in a monastery of the mind. I'm going to be armed. I'm going to speak my mind, but I'm not going to participate in this socialist dominated culture. I'm not going to watch the NBA. I'm not going to a movie. I'm not going to watch network news. And so all of these institutions that had a monopoly of the cultural, political, economic, and social landscape of the United States are very worried because they got their wish, but they're sort of like the Midas touch. They thought that it would be wonderful to turn everything to gold, and it turned out to be dross. In other words, you can't eat gold. And everything they turn and touch it turns to dross, and they know that now, and they're in a dilemma. But don't ever underestimate them, because cultural life and public opinion is often massaged by what we see on television, what we read in the newspapers, what we hear on the radio, what we see on the internet, how we communicate. Those are very powerful tools in their toolbox. But for now, they got rid of Donald Trump, who, as I think last time I said, is kind of a tragic hero. He's a John Ford. We're right out of a John Ford Western. Maybe The Searchers, if some of your viewers watched it, with John Wayne, or High Noon with Gary Cooper, or maybe The Magnificent Seven with Steve McQueen, where we call in one of these guys who has some aspects that we find, I don't know, bothersome at best and maybe uncouth at worst. And we say to them, we don't have the resources. We don't know how to fight these cattle barons or the bandidos. What do we do? And he said, I'll take care of it. And he takes care of it. And the better he does, the happier we are, and the more relieved that he's going to ride off into the sunset. So in that famous John Ford scene in The Searchers, when he brings back Natalie Wood, but he's been so tough and foul-mouthed about the processes in which he operated, he hands her to the family. They celebrate, and then he turns around and walks out that door, and you see the shadow walk, and nobody says, "Thank you, Ethan Edwards." Just like Gary Cooper throws down the badge, and nobody says, "Thank you, Marshall Kane. You got rid of all of our problems. Thank you." And that's kind of where we are. You want judges, he gave you judges. You want deregulation, he gave you deregulation. You want record low minority unemployment, he gave you that. You want record high Republican participation by more minorities, he gave that. You want a new Middle East, he gave you that. You want to defang Iran, he's doing that. You want to confront China, he did it. You want to change the tax code and favor investment, he did it. But he did it in such a fashion that now that it's happened, a lot of the people on the independent did not come out and support him. And they think, you know what? It's time for him to go.